So today we're doing some more Dungeons and Dragons, just because we've got a lot to talk about today. We're continuing on with what we had previously, which is about treasure and so on. So what I thought I'd look at is looking at the monsters and their treasure types. So before we get too into what this chart means, what we need to do is have a look at the definitions. But what we will just briefly discuss is that the treasure type moves down from A through to Z, and in the middle there between J and N you have what are called personal, so they're more like what's carried in pouches and so on. But before we get into any of this, let's have a look at what the definition of a treasure type actually reflects. I'm not going to read all of this out, I'll just throw up something for everyone to read if they wish. But the basic crux of all of this is that you've got a chart or a table which has how valuable the items are that are in the lair, and if there's a personal items, then they're found to be carried or to that value carried. The important takeaway from all of this is that you may actually end up with 0 treasure in a lair, because obviously there's a percentage chance of success. But more importantly, it must be stated, and this I will read, it must be stated that the treasure types are based upon the occurrence of a mean number of monsters, as indicated by the number appearing and adjustments detailed in the explanatory material particular to the monster in question. Which basically means that if you've got 1 to 5 of something, and they're in their lair, then the treasure type as it stands is for that rough 3 count. If you've got more, you add more. If you've got less, you have less. And so on. So that's pretty much it. And larger treasures are denoted by a multiplier in parentheses, not to be confused with treasure type X, just so that we know the difference between times 10 and X. So as we mentioned before, treasure types are A through Z, and then there's a bunch in the middle here that are related to personal types, individual per individual. So it could be 3 to 18 individual pieces of silver for a treasure type K. So if we have a look at some of the treasure types, some of them yield a little bit more than others, but overall you're always getting something. So with these percentages, I've always run these as 0, 1 to that number. So if it says it's a 25% chance, then 0, 1 to 2, 5. But if you run it to the top end of the values, that's entirely in your purview as well. So of course we need to roll some dice. I happen to have some dice here. So let's say treasure type A, and I have no idea what creature is treasure type A, but it looks pretty hefty. So in thousands of copper pieces, 25% chance, 98, no. 30% for silver, 39, no. 35% on the electrum, 46, no. Gold, 34, yes. So we have 1 to 10,000 pieces of gold, which work out to be 9,000 pieces of gold. Platinums, 12, yes, which is 1 to 400, and that's 200, based on that number there. So 9,000 gold, 200 platinum. Now we've got some gems to look for. 60% for 40, and we get that. how many pieces of gems, so that's 17, plus 9 is 26. Then we can calculate the value of that. No on the jewelry. Any 3 magic is 30%. 33, no, and 10% for sword, armor, or miscellaneous weapon. No. Not just, gold, platinum, gems, which is pretty good. And that can turn out to be quite a reasonable hoard. Out of all of these dice rolls, it's that. And that's assuming a mean number of whatever the creature is that falls in that category. So just rolling it back here for 1 second, because we can see how there was that large number of coins and everything else. There's a line hidden right in the middle of everything else, as you can imagine, in true Gygaxian way. The use of treasure type to determine the treasure guarded by a creature in a dungeon is not generally recommended. Now, remembering that this book was released a few years before the DM's guide, we can look back to what we said about the 3 different types of hoards, and that's what he's referring to. He's referring to that being the treasure rather than this being the treasure, if you know what I mean. So in his way, he's saying that sure, it might be their lair, but if you also want to have the big Smaug style hoard, that's a different scenario as well. There's a lot to take in from this little slab, and of all of the slabs in this initial, that's probably one that's got the most to be written about, and that includes the magic resistance, which gets a better expansion later. We'll talk about that another day. So here we are over in the Player's Handbook on page 36, and what we want to try and remember is that it's about the economy. Alright, what does that mean? A torch is a copper piece. A 10-foot pole is 3 coppers. Something like a flask of oil is 1 GP. A wooden large chest is 17 silver. So what we're looking at is in terms of what the money represents. And that's another part that you have to deal with as the DM. In my games, and this is just me, I run with more of silver as a base economy. Everyone getting paid in silver usually and running that sort of thing. So if we look at provisions, a pint of ale, 1 silver piece, which is fair enough. Someone might just go out and get a pint of ale. A small pint, which I'm not too sure exactly. I don't actually know if he understands what a pint is, but anyway. I'm assuming Americans run with pints. A pint of wine. You don't have a pint of wine, but that's alright. Even mead. Mead comes in flagons, which is generally closer to half a pint. And remembering, if you need to, that a lot of these, like the beers, the ales, meads, they were in substitution for food that they couldn't afford. So they would drink rather than try and consume food. So a merchant's meal is 1 silver piece, a pint of ale is 1 silver piece, and the pint of ale you could sit on for a while, if anyone's seen a pint of Guinness in action. Then we've got all of our other pieces and so on. So basically, 3 silver pieces for saddle. What you have to think of is, what does that normally represent in terms of the amount of money that's being generated? The other thing to keep in mind is when all of this was done, there was like a super hyperinflation of everything else. 10,000 for a small galley, 10,000 gold pieces sounds like a lot. we could probably end up throwing around that sort of money with just a single horde. And that's in part also why Gygax has how much it costs to run. You don't have to keep that level of bookkeeping, obviously, but you know. Something to keep in mind as the DM is, what does the value of a GP actually do? What does a person do, and how much are they worth? I know this is going slightly off topic, but we're talking about economy. So standard hirelings, day, pays, months, blah. So if you wanted to hire someone for a day, it's a couple of silver pieces, 3 silver pieces, 2 silver pieces. Link Boy is a silver piece a day. Teamster, 5 silver pieces for the whole day. And so on. So we're talking about a silver piece economy anyway, and the way that Gygax has it all laid out. And that's something to keep in mind when you have a brass ring that's worth 25 gold pieces. So just a plain ordinary simple brass ring that you find on something and it's worth 25 GP. It's actually worth a lot. It must be really finely wrought. It must be high quality or something else. Looking through some of the older modules, you'll find the weirdest items. Trade goods. In this room contains trade goods of 4,000 GP, which requires nothing less than pack animals and a day's worth of transport. Well, you know, players will do that. They'll spend that time. But that's the sort of thing that can make up an actual treasure type, especially with the more refined versions of monsters. The simple ones like shiny objects, it's all nice and pretty. I like a bright sparkly thing. But then others are a little bit more, oh, this is a really nice desk. I'm taking it. This is a nice Chesterfield lounge. I'm taking it. And so on. So if we look at a monster and we see that it's M times 10, then we're looking at 2 to 8 pieces per individual times 10, so it's 20 to 80 pieces per individual. There's no percentage on these individuals, that's just what they carry. And that might make up numerous different items within the pouch or the cloak. It might be the skin of a bear or whatever. Something that will give you anything between 20 to 80 pieces of gold's worth of value, should you choose to take that foul-smelling thing with you and carry it about. It also carries treasure type Q, which is 1 to 4, 50%. BS in the lair. So B and S. So they don't like a lot of things, but they sort of know how a value of items work, and they might like the look of them, they might actually know what they are. When you're dealing with a monster, they might carry something on them regularly, and when they're in their lair, and that was a lair for a set of ogres of 2 to 20, so roughly in that 10-11 sort of category. And then you would upgrade or downgrade the amount based on whatever was altered by that. So if you find a layer of 3 or 4 or 5, you could have a considerably reduced layer value, but their individuals would still be there. Found the treasure type A. 10 to 100 troglodytes. They do certainly enjoy a good hoard. As someone mentioned to me as well, extra healing is troll's blood, longevity is elf blood. But you understand what I was saying before with what I put previously. Invisibility potion is the invisible stalker Ica. Sure. Easy to get. Just to cap it off from where we were at before. So with all of this, this would be the primary. So this is off the random treasure map, sort of treasure determination, as page 120 on the DMG. So this is what we're looking at here. So you're going to put a large treasure in the middle of the dungeon, plus you're going to make it the lair to a home of troglodytes. Then the lair would be the icing on the cake, which would be the cake being the map table or the magic items table, or there's something like that, yeah? Which is pretty good. So this is the hall that they're after, but then what they find on top of that assists along the way. All right, again, thank you. Yep, I know I've managed to punch out a couple of these in a row. Don't get used to it, but you know, while I got the time and while I've got something to discuss. We'll get into the actual items and some of that a little bit easier, a little bit more in depth, and that might come in over the next few days as well, hopefully. All right, well, thank you so very much. Hopefully this has sort of cleared up some of the extra questions regarding monsters and their treasure types. And I look forward to hearing some of the comments. All right. Again, stay safe. If you like, you like. If you want to keep these going, subscribe. That's always handy. Like that too. I do sometimes try and fill in with other games along the way. And on occasion, I put things up on my Patreon page. If you wish, chuck a couple of bucks. If not, that's fine. I do this because I enjoy doing it. And we should try to keep this going. I hear the next revision of Dungeons and Dragons is coming out. That's not going to stop me from playing this one. So, all right. Thank you so very much for your time and patience, and hopefully this has been useful for you. All right. Bye.